Once, twice, three, shoot.
Rock, you lose again.
Paper beats rock.
No, it doesn't. Rock beats everything. Why do you even play paper? It's stupid. You should play rock. It's the best one.
Good day and good night. Welcome back to the High and Low Retrospective. Woo! The place where we rewind the reels and revisit the shows, places, and cultural moments that shaped how we saw the world.
Whoa, good morning, Citizen Venture. Welcome to the neighborhood.
Today we're talking about the Venture Brothers. If you only know the quick version, it goes something like this. An Adult Swim animated series created by Jackson Public and Doc Hammer, starting in the early 2000s about a failed super scientist named Rusty Venture, his sons Hank and Dean, their bodyguard Brock Sampson, a costume villain named the Monarch, and a whole world of secret organizations, super science leftovers, and adventure story debris circling around them. It began with a pilot in 2003, started its regular run in 2004, ran for 7 seasons, and eventually closed with a film in 2023. Or should I say 2023? I don't know why I'm saying 2023. Anyway, that's the quick version. The fuller one takes a little longer because The Venture Brothers starts out looking like one kind of show and then slowly turns into something else. At first, it feels like a very smart parody of old adventure cartoons. Boy geniuses, mad scientists, henchmen, arch villains, Cold War pulp, Johnny Quest energy dragged into adulthood and made a little sadder, a little meaner, a little more pathetic. That part is real. It's funny. But if you stay with the show, the tone starts to shift. Not all at once, nothing dramatic, it just gets heavier. The references are still there, the genre play is still there, but the people inside all of it start to matter in a different way. You stop watching them as types and start watching them as people trying to live inside old stories that don't fit anymore. That's usually the part that people are responding to, even if they describe it in a different way. Not just that it was clever, that it kept going.
And you! Stay away from those campers, huh? I don't want to see you on YouTube again.
Early Venture Brothers absolutely works as parody. Rusty is a joke about what happens when a boy adventurer grows up and becomes a disappointment. Brock is a joke about old school, hyper-competent masculinity dialed so far up it almost becomes surreal. The Monarch is a joke about villainy as grievance, obsession, and costume maintenance. And the world around them is built from familiar scraps. Pulp adventure, Hanna-Barbera residue, comic book melodrama, super science nonsense, all rearranged with enough confidence that even the throwaway jokes feel unusually dense. If the show had stayed there, it probably still would have had an audience. People would quote it, rewatch it, keep track of all the references. It would have had a life. But at some point, it stops being satisfied with only turning the old forms inside out. It starts paying attention to what those forms do to the people stuck inside them. That's where it gets harder to shrug off.
Come on, Brock! You need strong cardiovascular and agility training.
No.
Rusty Venture is still one of the saddest characters Adult Swim ever gave us. He has a name, he has the compound, he has the story everybody assumes he belongs in, and he seems exhausted by all of it. That's what keeps Rusty from being a one-note joke. He isn't failing into some neutral space. He's living under a father who still hangs over the show like a monument. Jonas Venture Sr. comes out of that older fantasy of the great man, scientist, adventurer, public genius, somebody so sure of his own place in the world that the world seems arranged around him. Rusty grows up under that image and never really gets clear of it. The older he gets, the more you can feel what the comparison has done to him. What Rusty got wasn't confidence, it was expectation. That's a rough thing to carry, especially when everybody around you seems to remember the version of your life that looked good from the outside. And once Rusty starts reading that way, the whole show shifts a little. Because he isn't the only person in this world trying to keep some old role from collapsing.
Let it all out. Don't be shy now. Hug away.
Daddy!
Now, Brock Sampson looks like he stepped out of an older fantasy of manhood and somehow never got updated. He's strong, silent, hyper-capable, violent in a way the show treats as both impressive and faintly ridiculous. He moves like the answer to a question nobody should still be asking. The Monarch is built differently, but he's trapped too. He lives in costume, in obsession, in performance. He treats villainy like a calling, but also like something holding him together. Rusty, Brock, the Monarch, different energies, different failures, different levels of self-awareness, but none of them feel fully self-made. They're all trying to keep old identities going. The genius, the bodyguard, the arch-villain, the important man. That's one of the things the Venture Brothers keeps returning to. These guys don't seem like they invented the way they move through the world. They look like they were handed the roles and told to keep them upright. Some days they can do it, some days they look flattened by it. And the show doesn't force that into a neat lesson. It just lets you sit there and watch how tiring it is, how much posture is involved, how much effort goes into pretending these old scripts still fit.
Hey, do-over! Everybody back in the cocoon. Try it again tomorrow.
This is where Dr. Mrs. the Monarch starts feeling indispensable. Because while so many of the men in the Venture Brothers are straining to inhabit these oversized identities, she often seems like one of the few people who actually understands the system they're moving through. She understands the guild. She understands the bureaucracy. She understands how much of the world runs on ritual, ego, paperwork, costume, and people refusing to admit how fragile the whole thing really is. She understands the Monarch too, which is no small thing. It really isn't. A lot of men in this show act like they're carrying history. Dr. Mrs. the Monarch, formerly Dr. Girlfriend, often feels like she's carrying the present. That's part of why she matters so much. She isn't outside the absurdity of the world, but she's rarely fooled by it. She can see the performance for what it is and still operate inside it better than most of the people supposedly born for it. And even her voice deepens that feeling. Dr. Girlfriend or Dr. Mrs. the Monarch, whichever one you prefer, is voiced by Doc Hammer, one of the show's male co-creators.
What, you too? Ugh, like father, like son. I'm not interested, Junior.
The series never really pauses to explain that away or turn it into a puzzle. It just becomes part of her presence. Part of why she feels harder to flatten. Part of why she seems to sit at an angle to the categories the show inherited from older cartoon logic. That's very Venture Brothers. The world keeps trying to sort people into these familiar forms. The show keeps loosening the edges, and because it had time to breathe, Dr. Mrs. the Monarch becomes more than a supporting type. She grows into one of the smartest, steadiest, most commanding people in the series. The show never really stops to underline that. You just spend enough time with her to realize how much more clearly she sees the world around her than most of the people trying to run it.
Now shut up and follow my lead.
Well,
Hank and Dean start inside one of the oldest fantasies in the whole setup, the boy adventurers. That's the original premise, right? The kids who grow through danger, the heirs who will eventually make sense of the world they were born into, the generation waiting to bloom. The Venture Brothers doesn't exactly believe that. The boys don't simply get wonder, they get repetition, confusion, protection that keeps failing in familiar ways. A whole environment shaped by damage that's already old by the time it reaches them. That's part of why they matter so much. They're not just future heroes, they're what happens when old stories reach another generation already cracked. By the time Hank and Dean are old enough to start choosing who they want to be, so much of that choice has already been warped by the world Rusty and Jonas built around them. That pattern runs through the whole show. Somebody hands you a story, you spend years figuring out what it did to the person before you, then you try to decide what, if anything, is worth keeping.
Dean! Wake up! You've been hypnotized by that magic man.
No, I just got up too fast. Total head rush.
And this is where Adult Swim really matters. Not as trivia, as condition. A show like The Venture Brothers needed time. That's it. More than most TV gets, more than most television is willing to ask for. It was the 2003 pilot, then the regular series in 2004, and after that, a rhythm that was never especially neat. Long gaps, delays, slow accumulation, things coming back years later and somehow landing harder because enough time had passed for them to settle in your head a little. On a more nervous network, that would have looked like a problem to solve. On Adult Swim, it became part of the atmosphere. That matters because The Venture Brothers doesn't reveal itself quickly. It needed the room to get stranger without anybody panicking, to get denser without apologizing, to let Rusty become more painful, let Dr. Mrs. the Monarch become more central, let the whole world start feeling less like a joke machine and more like a place where old myths are still walking around after the belief that powered them has already thinned out. Adult Swim let the show keep going in that direction. It didn't ask to get easier. It let it keep changing.
Hold on, I got a whiz. You want to take a whiz break? Anyone want to take a whiz break? For real?
A lot of the Venture Brothers is built from old material. Adventure serials, boy genius fantasies, super science, spy stories, organized villainy, comic book melodrama. The show keeps all of that in motion, but the longer it runs, the less it feels like it's simply pointing and laughing. It starts to feel like it's wandering through the remains. That's why the show can be hilarious and a little mournful at the same time. It knows those old stories still have force. It also knows that they don't hold the way they used to. And maybe that's why the Venture Brothers land so differently than a lot of reference-heavy comedy. It isn't mocking old pop culture from the outside, it's living inside the leftovers, trying to figure out what still has life in it and what's already started to give way. The result is stranger than parody. It starts to feel like recognition.
It'll be up to you, Rusty. Good luck, Godspeed, and go, Team Venture!
That part always chokes me up.
Part of what stays with people about the Venture Brothers is the density, sure. The callbacks, the deep cuts, the strange pleasure of watching a show that trusts your memory. But that isn't really the whole thing here. It stays because the show keeps circling something pretty uncomfortable. A lot of people are trying to build themselves out of stories that really don't work anymore. Stories about genius, stories about fathers, stories about masculinity, stories about destiny and competence and what power is supposed to look like. The show keeps coming back to the same uneasy gap. The story says one thing, the person living it feels something else. That gap is where a lot of the comedy lives. It's also where a lot of the sadness comes from. And the Venture Brothers was willing to stay there longer than most shows would. So that's the High and Low Retrospective on the Venture Brothers, a cartoon that began as a sharp, specific parody and slowly turned into something larger. A show about old roles, damaged legacies, and collapsing masculine performance, and frankly, one of the clearest-eyed women in the entire Adult Swim universe standing right in the middle of the wreckage. Maybe that's why it still lingers, because underneath all the costumes, references, and jokes, the Venture Brothers understood something a little painful and a little familiar. Sometimes the hardest thing isn't finding yourself, it's figuring out what to do with the stories you were handed before you knew they were already failing. High and Low Lives of the World, thanks for watching this one. I appreciate you. Like, comment, and subscribe for more deep dives into the shows, ideas, and cultural leftovers that shaped how we see ourselves. Until next time, stay critical, stay nostalgic, and remember.
Beep boop. What was that?
I just turned off the radio in my utility belt like he said to.
You said beep boop with your mouth.
No, I didn't.